Hello everyone, Chairman here. Today I'm showing you how to install the Cacti Syslog plugin to enhance your monitoring with Cacti. Now, Syslog allows us to receive event-based messages from devices that support the Syslog plugin. Now, unlike SNMP polling, where we reach out to a device, collect some stats, bring it back, and normally plot it on a graph, the syslog messages will say something like, "Hey, a user logged in, um, uh, a port flapped for 5 seconds," or something like that. These are things that we don't want to constantly pound the device and asking the question, "Hey, did this event happen? Did this event happen?" And even still with polling, because in polling normally happens in an interval, you may even miss that if you're constantly asking the device. Whereas if the device sends us a message, like in the case of Syslog, we'll know right away when that device had that event. So Cacti has the plugin called Syslog, and you can put on your Cacti system and receive these messages. So the very first thing we're going to do is clone the Syslog repository. Okay, so I'm going to go over to my Cacti plugins directory, and I'm going to do a git clone for Syslog. Okay, then I will go ahead and set the permissions for Syslog. Okay, before we go to the GUI to actually install the plugin, I want to go to the Syslog directory that we just have. There's a file here, config.php. Unlike the other plugins like thold and monitor, things like that, this plugin actually needs to read from the database directly. And that's because the way this plugin works is that the device sends logs to the server, to the rsyslog daemon or syslog-ng, whichever syslog server you're running, collects that data, and then that data is actually written to a database table for Syslog. And so before we actually do the full installation, you have to make a decision here. So if you have a small network and you have, let's say, 10 routers and switches, you have the option of of adding these tables to the existing Cacti database. Or if you have a larger network, you can create a database specifically for Syslog. Okay, so if you have hundreds and hundreds of routers and switches, and you're expecting to receive a lot of data, say security messages and things like that, then you may need to create a dedicated database. But for this lab, we're just going to use the default Cacti database. Okay, so the first thing we'll do is rename config.php.dist to just config.php. Okay, and we'll fill this out. So the very first line here, where it says use Cacti database, set to true. In this case, because we're using the Cacti database, leave this set to true. If you are not and using a dedicated database, then I would set this to false and then continue to fill out this info. Okay, so the database default, Syslog database default, set that to Cacti or whatever database you have set up for your Cacti database. Well, the name, I mean. Okay, and I just have it set to Cacti. Okay, so we're going to fill out that info. And now I'll head over to the GUI. Okay, so once I'm in the GUI under plugins, you'll see that there's a Syslog plugin waiting to be installed. And I have a couple of options. So I want to draw your attention to the retention policy. So the retention policy is how long you want to keep this data for. Indefinite, or a year, or right? So obviously, the longer you keep the data, the bigger the tables will get. So let's just say 1 week. Okay, and how do you want to set up the partitions? Okay, so the partitions will help with the performance of searching for data, right? So as the tables get bigger and bigger, right? So obviously, if you have like a small network, so in this case, the use case I would say is, you have like 10 routers and switches or something like that. Pretty much all of this default will work out great for you. However, if you have hundreds and hundreds of routers and switches or other devices, then you may want to tweak this. Okay, so once you've decided how you want everything, click install, and then click enable. Okay, so after the plugin's installed, let's just go ahead and check the log. Okay, no errors. We are golden. Okay, so first thing you notice is that, hey, there's no syslog messages coming in. Okay, so we actually have to set up our syslog to actually start sending the syslog messages to the syslog to the database. So head over to Etsy rsyslog.d, and we're going to create a file called cacti.com. Okay. Now on the syslog plugin site, there is an rsyslog configuration template sample. Okay, so we're going to select this sample. Okay, and we're going to fill out the database. So we're using the Cacti database. The user is Cacti, and the password is Cacti. Okay, so we can select, we can keep all that how it is, and go ahead and save it. Now, you will have to install a plugin, at least for CentOS, and that is a yum install rsyslog-mysql. Okay, so this is the plugin for rsyslog that actually allows it to write to SQL databases. Okay, so we'll just install this in real time. Okay, so we'll install that. And now we're going to restart our syslog. Okay, let's just check the status of it. Okay, so syslog is active and running. Okay, so let's go to the syslog plugin now. And as you can see, we'll set our unprocessed messages 5. So that means that there is messages coming in to the syslog plugin, and now we are getting syslog messages. So these syslog messages are local from the actual machine. So I have a router set up to actually allow syslog messages to be sent. So this is an older router, so excuse the use of telnet. Okay, so let's test this out. If I do on the Cisco, I'll do show run include logging, and as you can see, I have logging a logging host set. Okay, so we'll just do config t and then end. That should be good enough to actually send that message across. Okay. So we'll give it a moment to actually process this. So there's a, and if you check the logs, there is a syslog job that runs, right? That actually collects it. And as you can see, okay, there is a configure by console message. So syslog is now receiving messages from outside devices. So now let's just explore a couple of the options that come with syslog. So one of them is you can set up alerts based on a particular event. So just like threshold, where you can set up a threshold for, say, interface errors, you can set up a threshold to send out an alert based on a message. So if we go to the syslog, let's say I want to set an alert on this, right? So anytime someone enters the config console, I want to know about it. So I can click the green plus right next to it. That will create a new rule. So console. And let's say I want the severity to be a notice. Okay, and how many times should this happen? How many times should this happen before generating that notice? Okay, let's just say 1. Now, how do we want to match this string? So let's just say contains. Okay, and you'll notice that with devices, specific device software, especially Cisco, that certain events are prefixed with a specific message. So sysconfig will normally show up for any time someone enters the console. Okay, so all I really have to match for is sysconfig, the sysconfig event. And what's very useful here is that I can either get an email or I can issue a command. So if you have a script to say I want to open up a ticket with my ticketing system, you just have a script on the server, and you can pass certain variables. So say the host name, the severity, all that stuff to the script and open up a ticket on it. Okay. So I'm just going to save this. Okay. And by default, it's enabled. So let's try this again. I will enter config mode, leave config mode. Okay, and let's just wait for the message to come in. Okay, so as we wait for the message to come in, okay, it actually must have just come in just now. Yeah, came in just now. And as you can see, we have in the alert log a notice for that event. So that then would action based on, hey, do you want to send an email or issue a command, things like that. Now, there is something called removal rules. Now, removal rules are where we tell the syslog plugin to actually remove certain events from the view that you might turn out to be, say, garbage events or things like that, right? So let's say this removed slice user because this happened. This comes up a lot, right? So you can actually copy this. Actually, click the minus sign here. So we're going to remove this. So this will be a new removal rule. Okay, removal rule. Okay, have it enabled. Let's say contains this. And how do we want it? So deletion. So let's say delete and then say, I don't know, garbage message. And again, this may not be a garbage message. This is just for demo purposes. Okay, so we'll save. Now, the beauty of this is that I can actually run this right now to remove what's already in the table. So I hit reprocess. Wait a moment. And as you can see, that particular message is gone. So let's see with something way more apparent, like these UDP bad checksums. Okay, so let's say UDP bad checksum. Right. There's a lot of these little messages here. Okay, so we'll do contains, let's say UDP. Save that. Reprocess. And not there anymore. Okay. This also helps clean up the database because it's removing these messages over from the database, right? So you can very highly customizable for the Syslog plugin, right? And now there's a few more additional settings when you go to settings and then Syslog, and that is okay. Is it enabled, and how do you want HTML based email? There's statistics gathering. So statistics gathering tells us how many times, okay, particular messages are coming from a particular host. The validate host names. Okay, so validate host names works in conjunction with DNS. So if the host names are within your DNS, then you can have that validate host names. If they're not within the DNS, do not select that. Now, refresh interval. So default is 5 minutes. So if you want everything to be refreshed more, you can hit 1. And then command for opening tickets, things like that. Now, remember that retention period that we had from before. You can actually edit afterwards. So you won't be able to edit the database partitioning or any of that. But you'll be able to hit retention period. So if you decide later on, I only want 1 day's worth of logs before they're all removed, then you can select that. And then you have an option for the syslog messages and then the alert retention. So alert retention, those are the alarms that were passed to your ticketing system and stuff. So you're going to expect that you're going to have less of those versus syslog messages. So you might want to keep those longer. It all depends on how you run your shop. So we'll hit save. And there we go. We've explored the Syslog plugin and how to install it and what to expect from it. If you have any questions, you can leave them in the comment section below. And have a nice day.